Our next speaker is Becky Newman from the League of Women Voters.
So thank you very much for inviting us to talk about Propositions 1 and 2 on the November ballot. I think one of our themes today is Your Vote Matters, and I'd be hard-pressed to think there's anyone in this room who is eligible who's not planning to vote. If you're thinking of not doing that, see me afterwards. So first, a tiny bit about the League of Women Voters and what we do. The League was founded in 1920, right after women got the vote in this country. And the League's mission is to encourage informed, active participation. We started out thinking, okay, we got the vote, now we've got to use it correctly, but now we work with everyone. And of course, there are many good men in the League of Women Voters. One of them sitting right back there, Mary's husband, Charlie. My husband is out campaigning for partisan political purposes, so we won't talk about that. Then, in addition, we are a nonprofit organization and largely volunteer-driven. We have about 7 employees and hundreds of volunteers who do, among other things, the analysis that comes to you for these propositions. But believe me, these people are no slackers. They know their material. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. If we advocate for something, we do not advocate in a way that will favor a particular candidate or party. We work across both sides of the aisle for advocacy. And we work to increase understanding of major public issues, but also take positions on them. Today, Mary and I are here to advocate. This time of year, the League of Women Voters is out everywhere, and we'll be back at St. Mark, actually, in a few weeks, to talk about all the propositions, and then we don't tell you even what the League thinks about them. Whether we favor them or oppose them, we're just giving you the information, but we're here to advocate today. So, first of all, out there we brought you the list of propositions with brief summaries, including our positions on them. We also brought you a packet of information where voters can go to get nonpartisan information about propositions, but also about candidates. So, I urge you to pick one up. So, and I'm finding I'm still standing on my tiptoes, so I'm going to lower it a little more. So we're going to talk a little bit about what propositions are. And you learned this in 8th grade, but just in case, propositions are proposed laws, maybe you didn't because you come from another state, that the public needs to vote on. They can make new laws, they can change existing law, or they can change the California Constitution. And League of Women Voters members don't even like to think about that because we've got one of the longest constitutions you ever saw. We should really not do that, but there you are. They can be placed on the ballot by people, and this was originally a reform. Started back around the turn of the century, about the same time the League was getting started, the turn of the 19th century, when we were looking to find ways for reformers to get a foot in the door. So today, to collect enough signatures to get on the ballot, you need to end up with at least 5% of the number of votes that were cast in the last gubernatorial election. So right now, to get a proposition on the ballot, you need 365,880 valid signatures, and you need to get like 20% more for the people that accidentally signed twice or aren't eligible to vote, and those kinds of things. If more people vote, as I suspect they will, in the midterms this year, then that number's going to go up. So that's okay, more people are voting. And obviously, proposition can't become law unless it gets more than 50% yes votes. Thinking about how to evaluate a proposition really matters. First of all, you need to figure out who is really supporting or opposing it. And I have a big surprise for you. A lot of you just get one of these in the mail. Did you know that everything it says about the propositions or anything else, except something that comes from the ledge analyst's office, is a paid advertisement? The statements about the propositions and the statements about the candidates, they're to pay to put those in there, and the state does not vet them. It would be impossible. So it's up to you to think about who's paying for things and what acts might they have to ground, okay? So, we have 11 propositions this year, but we're only going to talk about 2 of them today. However, that handout that I mentioned will give you a little quick summary of all of them. The one I'm going to talk about is a general obligation bond. Those are sold to investors and paid back to the state's general fund Just like when you buy your house, by the time you pay it off, you've paid about twice what the principal was in order to use that money over time. Proposition 2 sounds like a bond because it talks about bond dollars, but it's really not. And Mary will explain that to you when we get to it. But Proposition 1 does authorize bonds to fund some specified housing assistance programs. And I'm not going to say much about that because you kind of already heard. But we all know that the price of a house in California is about 2.5 times the national average, and that we do already have some help for families that are low income or for people who are suffering in other kinds of ways. But we also know just by driving around in Orange County that that's not meeting the need at all. So not only do we have that 2.5 times the cost for housing, but rent in California is about 50% higher than throughout the rest of the country. That's why UCI has faculty and staff housing on campus, because you cannot get a professor from Indiana State to come here and leave his 4-bedroom house on half an acre and move into a 2-bedroom apartment somewhere in Irvine. So that's a huge problem. We are building about 100,000 units a year, but we're not keeping up. And we also get some money from the federal government to help with the cost of low-income housing, and we're not keeping up there. So Proposition 1 lets the state issue $4 billion in new general obligation bonds. About $1.8 billion will go to building or renovating multifamily housing. About $450 million is for infrastructure that's associated with that, so sewers, transportation, parks, those kinds of things. Another $450 million would be for down payment assistance to low and moderate income, and as we saw before, low income in California looks kind of funny, but it's because of what it costs to live here. And about $300 million would go for farm worker housing. And we don't think about that so much here, but they sure think about it in the Central Valley. Agriculture is a big driver of our economy, and the workers that do that work are probably the worst off for housing of anybody in the state. There's my Methodist Migrant Ministry voice. And then there's also $1 billion for home loans to eligible veterans. We estimate that about 30,000 multifamily units and 7,500 family units and 7,500 farm worker families would benefit from this. The cost for the bonds will be about $5.9 billion. That's for $3 million of the bond. The other $1 million and change is the veterans bond, and they pay that back. So the average cost to the state will be over 35 years $5.9 billion or $170 million a year. But you know what? That's half of 1% of the state budget. To most of us in the room, that sounds like one heck of a lot of money, but half of 1% of what we're spending. And think about the benefits. So what do the supporters say? Same thing we would say. Proposition 1 provides relief from the housing crisis by building some housing and helping people who struggle to buy housing. It honors veterans by helping them buy a home. There are a lot of supporters. The biggest one is something called the Affordable Housing Now Alliance. Mainly that's the Zuckerbergs and a few of their friends and a couple of unions. But there's a ton of supporters, and you can actually go online and find out who is spending that money. Who are the opponents? Well, there are certainly opponents, but none that had the guts to write a ballot argument. So there's a gentleman whose name is Gary Wesley. He's an attorney, and he writes the arguments for any ballot proposition that does not have a paid argument sponsor. So he's the one official opponent, and he says it won't help enough people and that there's too much debt already. So that's the opposition argument. So what does your vote mean? If you vote yes, and the yeses win, then the state will sell $4 billion in general obligation funds to fund bonds to fund various affordable housing projects and veterans housing projects, home loans. If the noes win, we won't. Sometimes it's hard to tell, believe it or not, what yes does and what no does. You'll remember some of the anti-smoking or apparently anti-smoking bills and how confusing those were, especially if they both won. But the big thing is, don't just vote. Talk to your friends. Make sure people have this information, because a lot of people have, in the recent years of kind of despair and anger that we're experiencing in this country, people come to think that their vote doesn't matter. Nothing matters more I have a friend who was elected to the city council in one of the South County cities by 1 vote. And there was a city in Orange recently that had a contested ballot. They recounted. There were no mistakes, and that was again a spread of less than 100 votes. Your vote does matter. It matters at the state level, the national level, and especially at the local level. So thank you for having us, and Mary Lee.